A few hours from now, Celtic walk back onto a European stage that suddenly feels a lot heavier than many expected when this campaign began. This is not just another Europa League night at Celtic Park. It is a crossroads moment, one of those evenings where 90 minutes can define the mood of an entire season. Win, and the door stays open with hope, revenue, prestige, and belief all still alive. Fail to win, and Europe disappears from the calendar far earlier than anyone at the club truly wanted, leaving only domestic football and a lingering sense of what might have been. There will be supporters who say that an early European exit is no great loss, that it allows the squad to focus fully on league business and avoid the midweek travel that has drained Celtic sides in the past. But that argument misses the bigger picture entirely. European football is where Celtic test themselves, where players grow, where the club measures its level against different styles, different pressures, and different standards. These matches matter financially, emotionally, and competitively, and nights like this one carry weight far beyond a single result. The build-up to this game has been anything but calm. The last couple of days have been dominated not just by thoughts of the opponent, but by off-field noise, awkward press conference moments, and a growing frustration around transfer activity. There was a strange tone to parts of the media engagement recently, moments that felt distracting rather than helpful, and while those clips will quickly fade, the underlying issues they highlight are still very real. Celtic are approaching the end of the transfer window with more questions than answers, and that uncertainty hangs over everything. One of the most concerning admissions to emerge was the suggestion that there is no guarantee of new signings arriving before the weekend, even with the deadline looming just a day later. In football terms, that is alarmingly close to the edge. Everyone can see that this squad needs reinforcements, not one or two cosmetic additions, but genuine competition and quality in key areas. The idea that Celtic could reach deadline day still scrambling, still hoping, still reacting instead of acting is deeply uncomfortable for supporters who have seen this pattern too many times before. There has been humor used as a shield, light-hearted answers to deflect serious questions, and while that may work in a relaxed environment, it grates when fans are anxious and the stakes are high. It is important, though, to separate responsibility from personality. The frustration is not aimed at the man answering the questions, but at the structure above him. Managing uncertainty with jokes does not create the problem. It merely highlights that the problem exists. The January transfer window is always difficult, and that reality has been acknowledged openly. Clubs are reluctant to sell, prices rise quickly, and planning becomes complicated when managerial situations change late in the year. Celtic found themselves in exactly that scenario, with little preparation done early and momentum lost before the window even properly opened. By the time attention fully shifted to recruitment, opportunities had already narrowed. What stood out most in recent comments was the insight into how fragile deals can be at this level. Targets can look perfect one moment, only for circumstances to change rapidly, whether through increased valuations, competition from wealthier clubs, or sudden shifts in a selling club's priorities. The idea of working through lists from preferred options downwards only reinforces the fear that Celtic may once again be pushed towards compromises rather than conviction signings. There is an understandable desire to avoid panic, to resist dropping too far down the list and bringing in players who do not genuinely improve the squad. Quality matters, especially in Europe, and adding bodies for the sake of numbers rarely ends well. At the same time, waiting until the final hours carries its own risks, particularly when loans become the default solution and long-term planning suffers as a result. One interesting clue did emerge in terms of the type of player being prioritized. The mention of wanting someone explosive, someone who can take defenders on and change the dynamic of a match, points clearly towards the wide areas. Celtic have lacked that spark too often this season, especially on the right side, where predictability has crept in and opponents have learned how to contain the threat. Speculation around attacking options continues to swirl, with names being floated that represent very different profiles and price points. There is the allure of players currently riding a wave of form and reputation, the kind who would immediately excite the support but demand serious financial commitment. Then there are those whose careers have stalled, players looking for a reset, a chance to rediscover confidence and rhythm in a new environment. Recent recruitment trends suggest Celtic are more likely to gamble on revival than to win bidding wars for rising stars. That approach can work, and it has worked before, but it requires sharp judgment and strong support structures. When it misses, the consequences linger, with players stuck between potential and performance, never quite delivering what was hoped. As the deadline approaches, the balance between ambition and caution becomes increasingly delicate. Alongside the discussion of incomings, there is also the question of who might leave. Interest from other leagues has been reported, but the stance appears clear that departures will only be considered once replacements are secured. On paper, that makes sense. In reality, it further underlines how static the situation currently feels. Movement is frozen at both ends, leaving the squad exactly where it was weeks ago. All of this forms the backdrop to tonight's match, a European fixture played under pressure rather than excitement. Celtic Park will still be loud, still emotional, still demanding, but the mood is more tense than celebratory. The equation is simple. Victory keeps the journey alive and earns a place in the knockout playoff round. Anything less opens the door for rivals to leapfrog and sends Celtic out. The opponents arrive with little left to play for in the competition, their own campaign already a disappointment, yet that does not make them harmless. They have competed in matches, stayed close on the scoreline, and shown resilience. Even in defeat, they are capable of punishing mistakes, and Celtic, on current form, cannot afford any complacency. There is also a familiar face returning between the posts for the visitors, a reminder of a chapter that did not end well in Glasgow. His time at the club will not be remembered fondly from a footballing perspective, but there is respect in how he has spoken about his experience and his connection to Scotland beyond the pitch. Those personal details add another layer of emotion to an already charged night. Team selection brings its own complications, with suspensions and registration issues, ruling out several players who many supporters would like to see involved. Injuries remain a concern, though there have been encouraging signs on the training ground, with key figures edging closer to returns. Managing those recoveries carefully is vital, as rushing players back too soon has cost Celtic dearly in the past. As the lights come on and the stands fill, everything narrows down to performance and mentality. This is a match that demands urgency, bravery, and clarity of purpose. Celtic know exactly what is required, and there will be no hiding place once the whistle blows, because European nights have a way of exposing both strengths and weaknesses in brutal fashion, and this one feels set to reveal far more than just a result. As the focus shifts fully onto the pitch, The reality for Celtic is stark and unavoidable. There is no margin for error, no safety net, and no room for drifting through the game, hoping that something eventually clicks. This is one of those nights where intent has to be obvious from the first whistle, where the tempo, the aggression, and the willingness to take risks must be set immediately. European football does not wait for teams to grow into matches, especially when qualification is on the line. The opposition may arrive with their European fate already sealed, but that does not mean they will roll over. In fact, teams in that position can often be dangerous, freed from pressure and willing to play with expression. Their Europa League campaign has been disappointing, yet a closer look at the results shows a side that has remained competitive, losing narrowly and rarely being overwhelmed. They have kept games tight, frustrated opponents, and proven capable of punishing lapses in concentration. Celtic, on the other hand, have struggled at times to control matches when the stakes are high, confidence has fluctuated, performances have been inconsistent, and the squad has not always looked settled. That is why the approach tonight matters so much. The crowd will demand intensity, but it is up to the players to channel that energy productively rather than allowing anxiety to creep in. Early dominance, clear passing patterns, and purposeful movement will go a long way in calming nerves both on and off the pitch. There is also an emotional element to this fixture that cannot be ignored. A European night at Celtic Park still carries a certain magic, regardless of recent results. The floodlights, the noise, the sense of history, all combine to create an atmosphere that visiting teams feel immediately. Harnessing that atmosphere is crucial. When Celtic play with conviction in front of their own support, they become a very different proposition, capable of overwhelming opponents and forcing mistakes. Selection decisions will inevitably be scrutinized, with several players unavailable through suspension or registration rules. The options are not as flexible as many would like. That places extra responsibility on those who do take the field. Leadership in key areas becomes essential, particularly in midfield, where control of the game will be decided. Winning second balls, dictating tempo, and breaking forward with purpose will define whether Celtic can impose themselves or end up chasing shadows. The defensive unit will also be under the microscope. European matches have exposed moments of vulnerability this season, especially when concentration drops or communication falters. Tonight demands focus from start to finish. One lapse, one poorly defended transition could undo all the hard work. At the same time, there has to be bravery in pushing forward, trusting the structure behind, and committing numbers into attack when the opportunity arises up front. The need for clinical finishing cannot be overstated. Chances in Europe are often fewer and harder earned than in domestic competition. When they come, they must be taken. Confidence in front of goal has wavered at times, but this is the kind of match where reputations can be rebuilt quickly. A strong performance, a decisive contribution can change the narrative around a player in an instant. Beyond the 90 minutes, there is a broader significance to staying alive in this competition. Progression brings not only financial benefits, but also belief, momentum, and credibility. It offers the squad further exposure to high-level opposition and gives younger players invaluable experience. It also sends a message internally and externally that Celtic still belong on this stage and are willing to fight for their place. There is also the psychological boost that comes from winning when it truly matters. With domestic challenges still to come and pressure mounting, across multiple fronts, a positive European result could act as a catalyst. Football seasons often turn on moments like this, nights where adversity is met head-on rather than avoided. The impact of success here could resonate far beyond this single fixture. Of course, failure would bring uncomfortable questions. An early European exit would intensify scrutiny on recruitment, squad depth, and long-term planning. It would strip away one avenue of redemption and leave little room for error elsewhere. That is why the sense of urgency around this match feels so heavy. Everyone connected to the club understands what is at stake, even if it is not always said explicitly. As kickoff approaches, the narrative narrows again to something beautifully simple. 11 players, one pitch, one objective. All the noise around transfers, press conferences, and speculation fades into the background. Once the ball starts moving, what remains is effort, decision-making, and belief. Celtic have been here before, facing nights that demand a response, and history shows they are capable of rising to that challenge when least expected. The supporters will play their part, as they always do, urging the team forward, reacting to every tackle, every run, every shot. But the responsibility ultimately lies with those wearing the shirt. This is their opportunity to seize control of the season, to push back against uncertainty, and to earn the right to continue the European journey. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The words spoken by Callum McGREGOR in a packed press room at Lennoxtown have sent a shiver through Parkhead, even if nothing was signed, stamped, or formally confirmed. Calm, measured, and visibly emotional, the Celtic captain chose his language carefully, yet enough was said between the lines to spark intense speculation about his future in the green and white. McGregor did not utter the phrase, "I am leaving," but when a player of his standing talks about chapters closing and the right moment to reflect on what comes next, the message rarely needs spelling out. Inside the club, there is a growing sense that this was less a farewell and more a public acknowledgement that change is approaching. McGregor spoke of pride, of responsibility, and of carrying the club in the heart rather than on the armband, a line that has already been dissected endlessly by supporters. For many, it sounded like a man preparing the ground, easing fans into the idea that the end of an era may be near. Sources close to the dressing room insist there has been no dramatic fallout, no row with the manager, no sudden breakdown in relations. Instead, the narrative emerging is one of timing and legacy. McGregor has been the heartbeat of Celtic for years, a leader shaped by European nights and domestic pressure, and there is a belief that he is weighing whether stepping aside now preserves that legacy rather than stretching it thin. Around Glasgow, the rumour mill is working overtime. Some point to interest from abroad, others to a possible move into a different role within the game. What is clear is that McGregor understands the symbolism of every word he speaks. A press conference, in this context, is never just a chat with reporters. It is a signal. For Celtic supporters, the uncertainty is almost worse than confirmation. Hope remains that this was merely an emotional moment, a captain reflecting aloud, yet the tone, the pauses, and the careful choice of phrases suggest something deeper. Until clarity arrives, Parkhead will live with the question hanging heavy in the air. Was this the beginning of goodbye, spoken softly but heard loud across Scottish football? Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.